So you can see some common themes through the track, and that's why we talked of the summary of things earlier on, where that link between using the brakes, the link between the steering and the throttle, the vision down the road, all those sort of things are certainly things you could improve on.
Yeah, I definitely think that there's the just braking. It's massive. And then just oversteering. It's just all adds to it. Yeah, it's just full. Oh my god. Okay, let's stop watching this. This is getting really confusing.
You'll you'll see some consistency in that whole session that you sent through. What we've described and analysed there was consistent lap after lap, and I think one of the beauties of it though is that when you've sent me your second session, I've actually already assessed that one, and you've made a huge improvement on almost all those areas. One of the main things on your next session is you just want to get a touch more consistency.
Yeah.
The processes that we've described in this one here you've made a lot of adjustments to fix those up. Now, it would have been amazing had you done the same lap, had you done the same car, I should say, in the second session. You'd used a different car. So we can't sort of compare the lap times, which is disappointing, because I'm sure you'd have been about 4 seconds quicker in the second session using the same car. As it turns out, you're about 8 quicker using the different car, but it's a significant improvement in the second one. There's still some things to work on, but we've certainly you've made a lot of great gains in taking on board what we've described here and putting them into practice.
I think this whole exercise has been it's sort of invaluable because from my perspective, reading your assessment and then going, okay, I'm going to jump in a car and I'm going to take on what he's just said and I can understand everything, and clearly I can't, because I need that chat and that just going through all the all the turns and everything and freeze framing and going back and chatting the whole thing and taking an hour to do it. It's just made me realise, oh, okay, I get it, and it's I thought I understood it, but obviously I didn't. Because I still went out in the M3, the E30 M3, and I was still it was understeering and I was still doing all this kind of stuff, and I went, oh, I just don't think this car is set up properly, I'll just get in another one.
It's funny how many people chase their car and just forget about how influential they are to that performance of the car. And whether it's on the sim or whether it's in the real world, the same thing applies, where if you focus on what you're doing first and foremost and understand that, okay, yeah, I am doing exactly everything correctly, so it's the car, or hang on a minute, I really can do this a bit better, and then you can continue to improve yourself before you chase the car. There's no point adjusting the car if you're still driving like junk, because then you're going to end up with a better car, but still with the same lap time, because you've got no value out of the improvements, the suspension or brakes or whatever power you might have increased. The other thing to add to that is, regardless of the car, the process is the same. So when we talk about the way you use the brakes, the vision, the patience on the throttle, the link with the throttle and the steering wheel, all those things, and the angle of the car at the apex, all of that is just as relevant regardless of which car you're in, regardless of how fast it gets to turn one, regardless of how fast it can go through turn one. The process is the same. Now, the ability of the car is different, and so you may adjust things a slight little bit here. You might be braking a touch earlier or a touch later. You might be turning in a metre earlier or a metre later. You might need to wait that touch longer if it was a front-wheel drive, for example. You just got to wait for the car to turn that little bit longer before you bring the throttle in, because those tyres are trying to do both jobs, and little things like this. But the basics are going to be identical. Then just the fine-tuning are going to be that little bit different. When you hear professional drivers talk about having to learn to drive a new car or drive a different technique, often they talk about it like it's miles apart, because in their world it is miles apart, because they're already at the top of the pyramid.
Yeah.
If you're not near the top of the pyramid and you're talking miles apart, you've lost yourself. So you've got to just remind yourself of that. And finally, the other thing is that watching videos or watching your own videos or someone else's, if you're trying to learn from someone else, that's great, but you need to understand what are you looking for. What is it that I'm trying to analyze when I'm watching this video? What is the thing that is I'm looking for here? Am I looking at the balance of the car? Am I looking at what they're doing with the steering wheel, the throttle pedal, the brake pedal? You need to know what you're looking for. Don't just watch someone and think you're going to learn from that. You need to understand what it is that you need to analyze. Hence the reason that having a professional do that is valuable, because they will direct you in the right areas to go, here's the things to focus on, here are the things you want to be looking at when you're assessing yourself or looking at someone else's assessment. And then again, even if you are looking at other people's driving, are they doing the right job? Do you really want to learn from that person? Are they the best person to learn from? They might be the quickest that you know of, but are they doing the right things, or are they that much different to you that it's going to mean you can't understand what they're doing and you won't learn? So I don't want to sort of be using this as a sales platform to go, hey, come and get a driver coach, because we're the only ones that will help you to get the right answers. But it is actually the truth. It's the smallest investment you'll make in your driving. Think about anything else you spend on your car. Even putting a full tank of fuel in your car is, $80 to $100 in some cars. It doesn't cost much more to get professional assistance from a driver coach to give you the right direction to go in or analyze things and stuff like that. Yet people think they don't think they need it, or they think they know it or whatever. Because you've driven through on the roads, you don't need someone to tell you. To be honest, small investment with the biggest performance gain, it's well worth it. So
I do think, you can transfer that into a majority of things. I know that when, excuse me, I was, when I learned how to play golf, I didn't go and look at Stevie Ballesteros or Jack Nicklaus and go, I need to emulate that. I don't look at Michael Schumacher and go, I need to emulate that. It's, or Possum Bourne or anything like this. It's just, because how do you can't be those people, because those people are, for me anyway, because there's so much more just to get to that point. You have to sacrifice so much stuff, and the thing is, you're not going to, I'd love to hit a ball like Tiger Woods, but he's got quite a strange swing, that if you tried to do it, you'd probably end up either airing the ball or taking a massive divot. So it's the same thing like that. Try and play tennis like Roger Federer and stuff like this. So I do believe that, and I do believe that getting one thing I learned from playing golf was, don't learn bad habits, because if you learn bad habits, you're going to have to try and break them, and then you'll have to go back to basics. And I think maybe it's the same thing for driving. If you learn some bad habits, it's going to be hard to break them down, especially I think with driving. You've got a lot of egos. You've got a lot of, I'm a great driver.
2 points out of what you were saying there. The bad habits thing is that people tend to learn bad habits not even knowing they're learning it, just by driving on the road. Most of the things you do on the road create bad habits for the track. An example of that is exactly what you've been doing, and what we've tried to describe for you not to do is to don't get off the brake so quick, don't get back to the throttle so quick. But when you're on the real road, you turn up at an intersection, you put your brake on, you stop. You get to the end of the intersection, you look out, look left, look right, and then you accelerate and you steer as you turn through the corner. Now, that's exactly what you're doing on the racetrack at high speed, high intensity, which is all out of whack for the balance we need when we're at those levels of driving. But the habit you've created by driving through every intersection, by getting there, stopping, coming off the brake, then accelerating and driving and turning, is creating a problem for you on the track. So you need to change that habit. The other thing is the coaching side of it. You mentioned golf, you mentioned tennis, and there's a lot of other professional sports where they have coaches. And even in driving, there is coaches. They're becoming, a lot of drivers don't talk about having a coach, but there's a lot of drivers that do have it. Now, what we've talked about today, majority of which has been all technique orientated. And most drivers we see at our Evolve Driving events are probably going to still be at the technique level.
Right.
Some drivers get to a point where they're actually going quite well. And as a coach, we're not just going to talk technique. Okay, we've reinforced your technique, your fundamentals are solid, it's now taking it to the next level. And now it starts to get a bit more of a mindset. adjustments. How do we adjust the mindset to allow you to break that little bit later, or to analyze the next level of performance assessment, or to help you to adapt to a new track or a different race environment, or whatever the scenario might be. So driver coaches aren't there. A lot of people might get to a point and think, yeah, look, I can brake, I can turn, I can accelerate, I know all that. But what the other part of a coach is that giving you the right tools off track to continue the training, giving you the right preparation for an event, giving you the right mindset, and controlling and maintaining that mindset over a race weekend or whatever it might be that your event is, or even a club day or something. And then the post event, where you know how to assess the right sort of things and what parts of that you want to take out to use to replicate next time, or to use to improve on next time. So there's so many aspects to the coaching that some people forget about, that it's not just about your braking, your turning. It's actually a lot about mindset as well. There's a whole other aspect of it. And as a coach, I love that. I just really enjoy helping people to do the technique. Obviously, that's great, but to then help them in that mindset side of it as well, and help them take the next level of whatever performance they're trying to gain in the race environment they're going in. It's really enjoyable to see the results you can get from that, whether it be little physical activities before they get out on the track, whether it be things, references to read or watch or whatever it might be. You're just giving them all of the right tools so that they can perform as well as they can. And that can be in the sim or in the real world.
Yeah. Do you cover fitness regimes with drivers?
No, I'm not a fitness trainer. I do a lot of fitness work myself and all that sort of stuff. And I know a lot of, things that are relevant to driving in terms of fitness, but that's more for a personal trainer or a physical trainer to actually implement the specific training things that person might need. And obviously everyone's different in their physical makeup at whatever point in time they are, whether their weight and size and their goals in terms of the events they're doing. But there are some little physical activities we do before an event, for example, to switch on some of the reflexes and reactions and stuff like that.
The ball thing that they do.
Yeah, correct. We do some balls. Yeah. Do a bit of skipping, do a bit of ball, do a bit of all those sort of things to get them ready to go with regards to some reflex stuff and getting that sorted out so they get into the car a little more switched on.
Yeah,
and sometimes that's different for every driver. Some drivers like to just be chilled and relax and things, but there's a point where you do need to switch on a little bit and get yourself up. And everyone's different. Some people might want to listen to heavy metal music. Some people might want to listen to chill out music, whatever, before they get out there. But you work with each individual and identify those things and help manage that. And I think that's the other part of it. Over a race weekend, for example, if we're doing coaching at that level, you set up a lot of those little processes and routines and things, and you also just try to take away a lot of the little shitty jobs or thought things from the driver, so they can just think about driving, think about their preparation, think about their performance, and the little things like going to get lunch and all that sort of stuff. You go and get their lunch for them, you've got a drink for them, you've got things ready to go, and it just means there's a couple less things for them to think about, which means their brain space can be more focused on the driving. Now, not everyone's as aggressive as that in terms of their driving goals. They want to just go and have fun on the weekend, even if they are racing, and that's cool. We can have fun. I actually have a lot of fun with most of the drivers, regardless of the level of competitiveness that we're trying to achieve. But if you want to get right up the top end and really push yourself to the performance that you might have within you, then we can do that as well.
Is that something on an Evolve day where you can do the? I've seen on the Formula One, some guys do the reflex balls and stuff like that, or their coach or whoever drops the ball and they catch it and whichever. But even just the focusing side of things on an Evolve day, do you does anyone or can you have someone sort of just being focusing and visualizing the track and all this kind of stuff, and then getting in the car and being 100% focused? Because I know that it's fun to turn up and film and photograph there and get to drive around the track, but it's more about hey, cool, that's a cool car, hey, cool, whereas it'd be good to be really focused and go, right, got to
yeah Absolutely, and that's the beauty of our days, is that we've got people there just having fun, and we've got people there that are taking it a little more seriously to develop themselves in all aspects of their driving. And like for yourself, for example, because you're doing a bit of video and photos and stuff in between, you probably don't get the same focus in terms of the coaching we provide. But if you ask for it, the coaches will go, right, okay, we're going to do this, and they'll focus you to a certain point to the goals
Right.
you've got. And that's the same, people that I coach on my events would also, if they've asked for that level of coaching, then we're going to go that. If it's not for them, if they're not right, if they've still got technique to work on, we're going to go, right, that's great that you've got that aspiration to want to include that, but we need to work on this, fundamentals, build that base up, and when we get to a point, then yeah, we're going to start doing those things. But for most drivers that we sort of work with there, who are relatively competent, being on a few events and their fundamentals are solid, we are then getting them to self-assess. We'll then check their self-assessment with our assessment and say, yeah, that's correct, you're thinking the right things here and you're looking at the right sort of areas. We might get them to write down their preparation for the next event. We'll have a look at it before we go out and say, right, yep, you are going to be focusing on the right two things to change on this session compared to the last session, or whatever it might be. So that does already happen on our events, and it does happen individually. Everyone does it their own way as to how much they, what their goals are and how much, how serious they want to take it.
Sure. Yeah. And I guess you asked me one question when I got out of the car, and this was, after a day, what was I thinking of? And I couldn't remember. I was like, I don't know. How smooth I went, I don't know. I mean, is there a kind of a checklist or an assessment kind of thing that you can do when you get out of the car?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the assessment that we sent you is I suppose a reference point to start from, and say, okay, if I'm thinking about the things that I've mentioned here, then that's giving me a point to move on from. Now, some of those things I might tick off and have mastered them after a few sessions. I might be able to be, maybe not mastered, but you will have got them under control a little bit more, so you don't need to think about them as much. And as you get further up the tree, you're going to find yourself being able to identify fewer and fewer things, or the things you're identifying are now more incremental adjustments, not big adjustments. So those little checklists, and people can write, they can use our notes that we make and use that as a guide for themselves to make their own notes. And there are some drivers I see who do that. After every session, they'll get out and make their own notes. And in fact, Lewis Hamilton still makes his own notes after every run, and Sebastian Vettel the same. They make their own notes after every session, every run they do, they make their own notes. And they're literally still written down. And that's because when you write things down, you do buy into it a bit more, you do remember it a bit more. If you just get out and think about it, it doesn't embed as much in your brain, and you don't remember it as much next time when you go back to it. Now, they don't necessarily pull out their notes from 4 years ago and remind themselves when they were at this track they did this, this and this, but if they had to, they could.
Yeah.
Even if they don't have to, because they'd written it down at the time, it's much better ingrained and embedded into their mindset, so that it's already something that's in their filing cabinet ready to come out if they need it. With the notes that we take, we have various options in terms of the notes that we use. So sometimes it's just general. Turn one will have just turn one notes. You can make whatever notes you want about it. Then we might have specific ones that will say, what would you like to repeat and what would you like to change? So at turn one, next session you go out, you're going to repeat these things that you were doing well, and you're going to change these things that weren't working so well. Right. And you can do that for the whole circuit, or you can do that for 2 corners, or you can do that whatever you want to do. And then the other option you might have is where you're really analysing infinite detail on each corner. So the initial brake application, the next phase of the braking application, the releasing of the brake, the turn-in phase, the entry phase of the corner, the middle of the corner, the exit of the corner, and the final part of it. You can break it down into so many smaller increments and analyse each one of those. And whether you're using a scale, 1 to 10, you're going to rate yourself out of 1 to 10, or whether you're doing notes on each facet of the corner and detailing how each one works and feels. You can, work out however you want to go about that in, again, to the detail that fits your goals.
Yeah.
The beauty of that is that a lot of corners are similar. So you may not need to write notes for every corner because turn 4 is similar to turn 8, and you can just go, right, that process I've used over there is very similar to what I need to use over there, or this corner is very similar to this one at this other track. And so you can reflect back upon what you're doing at this section of track at Sandown and think about it in reference to the track at Winton, this section of the track. So if some people get a bit caught up in the fact they're at a different track, but if you look at the corner and go, well, it's got a similar characteristic to this other corner I've done elsewhere and I know how to do that, transfer the skills and awareness and process to this track here, and then you're already one step ahead. You don't have to learn a whole new track, you only have to learn a few corners or adapt a slight adjustment to fit that track.
I think that worked really well when you said that last time, and I managed to get the hang of Silverstone, and now I really like it. But it was just, this corner is a fast corner, okay, that's like this, this is like 2 and 3, okay, cool, so I've got to do this kind of going into, and it helped me understand the track a lot more, and so I wasn't this is a strange corner, I don't know how to even attempt to go around this corner, and I'll just wing it. But then you kind of realize, it's that kind of corner. Okay, that's like that.
Yeah.
Even
some of the work
even Phillip Island. I mean, that's got some. That course freaks me out because it's, like turn 2, and you're going around. You're going, well, where am I supposed to be on the track? Just in the middle. You're like, well, that doesn't make sense. But then there's other tracks around the world that you're going, no, this is actually right. It's a big long corner. So yeah.
Yeah, and when we work with people that are going to a new track, and a lot of the preparation may be that we're just reflecting on the track that they're used to and pulling out corners that we can say this is similar to this corner, and that way they can get to a new track and feel a lot more comfortable early on. And the earlier you feel comfortable, the earlier you can build your performance. If you spend 2 sessions to get used to the track rather than a half a session, then you're obviously going to be further behind on the performance scale. The other thing about the other thing about lines on a track, I don't know the track, so I don't know the lines, but the lines kind of come to you if you've got the right processes and you are aware of why you're driving a particular corner a particular way, the feeling of the car, etc., and the way you use the brake and then the throttle and all the rest of it, then the line naturally sort of falls into place. Some people focus too much on the line and not enough about what you need to do to get the car to go around the corner. Right. And, I've got to get the car positioned here or whatever. And sometimes you see them miss the apex and think, I've got to be at the apex, and they try to steer across the apex even though they've missed it. No. If you've missed the apex, you've missed the apex. You've got to keep thinking about what's next. So feel the car. Feel how the car is wanting to be driven rather than the car needs to be here, the car needs to be here. That's not what, it doesn't need to be anywhere. You have to feel what it wants to do and allow it to do that. Now, as you get more time in the seat, you'll get more familiar with those things and become better at understanding that, and that's where the awareness side of what we're trying to coach. We can build technique and the process that comes with that, but then it needs to be linked with awareness. The more you do the process, the more aware you become of how that process works and how it doesn't work, and so then you can adapt to the changing environments that you might find yourself in.
Yeah. Well, this has been very informative. It's coming up 1 hour and 45 minutes, so I'm going to be cutting all this down into little tiny pieces. Because I don't think I'm going to put an hour and 45 minutes up on YouTube.
No, that's good. I remember when I think you put a post out with, I think it was a picture of your sim, and it said, we're doing some stuff coming up. And there was a few people that wrote in saying, I'm looking forward to this. Okay, so I think it's going to be great to be able to send through a follow-up and let people see the assessment that you've done and how it works. They'll be able to then see that there is value in it for everyone. And then I think we really should do another session just with the second assessment, even though it was a different car. Although, did you want to go back and drive the M3 with the new process?
I will actually. I will. I think after doing this, I think it works really well, and I understand it a lot more. So I'll be able to because I think I was just trying to rush that car around the track going, no, it's got to go around faster, and it just wouldn't, and I went, no, it's a piece of shit, I'm going to jump in something better.
No, get back to driving it
Yeah,
properly, and I think you'll find a huge value.
because I
The
think,
way you drove let me just have a quick look at some of the notes. The way you drove the other, what was it, the Z3, or what was the other car you
Z3M,
drove?
yeah.
Yeah. Um, you were doing so much better in so many ways. You were using the
Right.
steering wheel much less. You were carrying the brake a lot better into the corners. You were turn 8 has now become a little bit more difficult for you because you're probably out braking yourself a bit there.
Yeah.
Um, but turn 4, which was your previous worst, was now becoming a little bit better.
Yeah.
You started to get a little bit greedy on that flat curb down the hill, the turn 7. You're getting a little bit greedy there, which then upsets the car on the way into turn 8. But overall, the consistency was much better and the process was much better everywhere.
Okay.
So yeah, it's actually there's a lot more things going really well for you there, and I'm sure that if you drove that way with the same car, you'll find a huge improvement. And I think it'll be in the region of about 4 seconds if you got it all right.
I do think also, I mean, trying to take this to the real world, and I know that the sim is going to be slightly different and everything. However, changing cars, I mean, I can't change that just because I don't like it. I can't change it I can't change it every 5 minutes. It's not, oh no, I want to try something else. I want to try something else. It's like, no, just stick with that for a while. Get used to it. Drive that. Don't, and the same thing on the sim. Don't just go, oh, I don't like that, I'm going to jump in a GT3. Jump in a GT3 after you've done your training, and then jump in it and go, okay, cool, I'm going to have some fun around Bathurst in a GT3. That's fine. But I think that's what I kind of do. And I after doing this with you today, I just went, no, I'm going to go back to the M3, drive around, and then I'll jump into Competizione and jump in my GT2 or whatever it is and race around. But always come back and do my training with this, So
yeah, good one. Yeah. Well, awesome. Let me know and send it through as soon as you've done your few laps on that.
Yeah.
I'd love to assess it in the same car, and I'd love to see that you go ahead and do what you did in the Z3M, whatever it was, and do those same improvements. Just be patient, work on the process. The reward will be there. Don't look at the lap time; just let that come.
No, I'm not
I think that's one of the other things to include in all the discussions is that, unfortunately, with motorsport, the parameter that most people will always refer to performance is a lap time. Now, ultimately, on a race day, that's the goal. However, when you're developing, the lap time is irrelevant almost to most people. They need to just work that process, focus on that. The lap time will come if you've got that worked out. So don't rush the lap time, or don't use that as the focus point until you're at a point where it's actually a viable reason to use it. So a race weekend or whatever. Even on day 1 compared to day 2, the track evolves. There's the lap time between the two. You might drive exactly the same, but the lap times are going to be different regardless of how well you're driving, simply because of the conditions of the day, the ambient temperature, the track temperature, the tyre condition, the fuel level, or whatever. There's so many little small differences that can be a second and a half just between the 2 days. Simply everything else identical the way you drive, just the conditions of the day are going to be a second and a half different. So
yeah, right. I never really think about it like that.
Yeah, so in the sim, that's probably, obviously that's why sims are so good, because there is consistency between conditions and day to day. So you can use it a little bit more in those environments once you've developed your process and your technique. But in the real world, it's so irrelevant to you to use lap time on our events, for example, because they have no relevance to what's going to happen on the Sunday club day that you go to, when conditions can be different. That's the day when you just need to get the process as well as possible.
Yeah, I just don't really get it. I mean, if I was doing a time trial on a bike, sure, I'd do a time trial on a bike and I'll figure it out. But we used to do time trialing back in New Zealand, and one Tuesday you'd have a backwind there and a headwind on the way back, and then the next week was totally different, and you went, oh, I didn't really do that well, and you're thinking. Yeah, because it's totally different conditions. Same road, same bike. You haven't improved massively over a week. But that's the thing. I think the same with cars. It's like And sometimes you have off days as well. I just
Yeah,
think,
yeah.
oh, I don't really get it today. I'm not really having a good day, and you think, oh, whatever. Let's just have some fun. It's like skating. You're going,
Yeah,
oh,
yeah.
I could have got this 50-50 yesterday. I can't get it today. I suck. You think, well, you're just having a bad day. And that's, Tony used to say, just go and skate somewhere else. Do something else. It's like, oh, okay, right.
Yeah, exactly. Change your trick selection that day. Yeah.
That's right. And I guess with driving, go and concentrate on something else. Concentrate on turn 6 or something as opposed to turn 1,
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, dude. Well, we'll catch up soon.
Cheers, mate.
All right.
See you later.
See you. Bye. And
It's funny though, you drive better in the real world than you do in the sim.
Well, it's because I've got my yellow calipers. They make me drive
Oh,
really well.
yes, those carbon. You got the carbon brakes.
All right. I set myself up for that one though, didn't I? Anyway.